How to spot a psychopath. Okay, that'll be the title of the video, because I think that'll get the most clicks to check out. But basically, the theme here is lessons learned from my experiences, having lived with, been friends with, and really there's one relationship in particular that we had so many conversations about life and philosophy and everything else that illuminated me, helped me understand how a psychopath thinks. And I think, from my perspective, we split hairs by trying to say, well, that's a psychopath, that's a sociopath, that's a narcissist. To me, my opinion, it's the same brain. The characteristics, the traits, the way they think and see the world are very similar. And I think that this, just a word like a psychopath gets becomes really a charged word, and then people don't want to use that anymore. So now it's sociopath. And I get that concept, but for me, I'm talking about all three. So let's start with how my eyes opened to the reality of psychopaths. To me, it was always it's a rare thing. I'll probably never run into one. They're scary, they're monsters, they're all behind bars, they're killers. That was my naive view of it. I never thought I'd really bump into one. But living here in Hollywood, this is about 7 years ago, moved into a place, and the guy who was holding himself out as the owner of the place and renting it out was real clean cut and charming and extra nice, but always name dropping about celebrities he was with, and wasn't actually doing anything. And there was a dark energy about the place. Had all these rules about, because there were several of us living there. I was just renting a room, all these rules about, to be here you got to do this, that, and the other. So that's one of the traits. Psychopaths love rules, love to set the rules for you. And I know that too because, again, my friend who I love, I'm not judging them. I should have started off with that. I don't hate psychopaths. I don't fear them. I don't judge them. The world would be a very boring place without such people. But, I think humanity, you as a person and as humanity, needs to recognize the traits and the behaviors and recognize that they cannot be judged for what nature made them. They make lousy leaders. Every tyrant throughout human history had this condition. They crave power. They want it. And I'm not ramble as always. How do I know that? Well, in conversations with my friend, the topic of Hitler came up. And I said, look, dude, Hitler was not a brilliant man. He was below average intelligence. You don't have to be brilliant to rise to that kind of status and power. You just have to have no shame. And his response is, well, Doug, if it's so easy, why don't you do it? I say it again, if it's so easy, why don't you do that? Why don't you rise to that level of power and control everybody and try to dominate the world? And I laughed. It's because it's evil. That's why I don't want that. I wouldn't want that for my side. It's all men are created equal. And he laughed. Doug, you don't actually believe that's true, do you? We're not all created equal. Some of us are better than others. The dude was, and listen, again, he's not an evil person. He's probably capable of evil. He doesn't want to be a bad person. He didn't recognize that there was something wrong with him. He thinks that everyone thinks like he does. Everyone's out to screw him. The dude had a hard time grasping nuance. Everything was black and white to this guy. And if I tried to, any topic we talked about, it felt like he was always taking the opposite side, and that's cool. I love a debate, a discussion, but it was always a game to him. Every discussion was a game that he had to win. I would say something clear as day, and he would then twist my words back to me and say, well, and I say, no, that's not what I said. If that's what you heard, let me clarify. And he's like, no, you can't take it back. I mean, my friend, are you trying to learn something from me, or are we just playing a game here? If you can change my mind about a subject, that's great. I'm open to that. I don't lose any face. No, it's not a blow to my ego if you can illuminate me on a different perspective of things. And that's exactly the opposite of how he took it. He could never admit that he maybe was mistaken about something. He is a sucker, just a sucker for whatever scheme. You get these $45 fruit juice things. You get the membership, and it's claimed to have all these health benefits. And dude just has no skeptical thinking whatsoever. Someone said something to him earlier. Well, now that's his vision of how things work. Give you an example. We're talking about whether streaming video or actually downloading it uses more data on the phone. I'm not that savvy, but I was just thinking about it logically. Well, the same frames and pictures are coming in either case. Whether you stream it or download it, should be the same amount of data that's being used. And he said, oh, no, my friend told me it's absolutely certain. I said, well, hey, look, let's Google it. Let's find out. And sure enough, and it's clear as day, of course, it uses the same amount of your data, your mobile data. Could never admit it, would never apologize for anything. At the end of every debate, discussion, it was always that I was just being stubborn. And I was like this, I get that that's how you see the world. I'm not saying you're wrong. That's your vision of things. I happen to not agree with you. I happen to think, and I can respect, I can respect you for that. He would never have the same level of respect for my opinion. He was always right. It became ultra frustrating to talk about anything with this guy because I realized it's a game. A game that you have to win, and you're willing to cheat by like twisting my words and telling me I said this or I meant this when I didn't. Arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else, and in reality, not. Again, they crave power. They want to be the boss, the CEO, the president. Want their name on the side of the building. Can't take criticism. Thin skin. Childish. Now, that was my friend most I've been talking about, but also I had two roommates prior to that were actually ripping off me and my fellow roommates, like charging us for electricity every month. When I clocked them, I said, dude, they don't send a bill every month. Dude hid in his room. I'm knocking on the door. Look, you're going to stand here and apologize for ripping us off all this time. It's just like a little kid, a child, man-child. Don't make fun of them. Don't hate them. Do not fear them. But recognize it. What else can I say that might help shed some light? Oh, okay. Let's talk about this. Who are the rapists of the world? Now, number one, you hear about it all the time in like prison, in men's prison. This idea it's about power, dominance. That's why you have these male rape. Is I don't know how common it is, but it's obviously a thing in prisons because so many of these prisoners are psychopaths. It's not about sex; it's about power. Power hungry, can be mean, childish. I'm not being very flattering, right? But you gotta love them. But also, we talked about the fact that the dance clubs we'd go to. I loved, most of the people I'd meet in the clubs in Hollywood were cool, friendly, kind of that hippie, hanging out, having fun person. But there always seemed to be like a dark, shadowy side of the club scene. These dudes that kind of lurk in the shadows, and they're just waiting for some girl to get drunk, right, so they can go feel up on them or molest them or slip them the date rape drug and take advantage. Vampires, I call them. So that scene seems to bring out both the dark and the light. And his response to that idea was, he said, well, Doug, if these girls get drunk, don't you think they actually want to have sex? It's just an excuse. I think his concept basically is that sex is always good. They can act like they don't like it, but of course they like it. So I think that helps maybe humanity come to grips with these people. Maybe that's how they see it. Sex is never bad. Sex is great. And even under those circumstances, they actually enjoy it. Man, this is just a topic that, again, humanity has to come to grips to. We can no longer afford to keep allowing or electing this type of person to run the show. Why do we have slavery, puppy mills, pharmaceutical greed, because there's people in this world with no conscience. No conscience. There's no right. It's all about me. Think of a black hole. And no empathy. They just don't care. They will rip off that elderly couple because they don't care. The Bernie Madoffs. I don't know them that well, but that's the kind of person. These Ponzi schemers. I think faith healers. Entertainers. Sorry. And then you look at their track record, their history. And then you recognize there's a certain checklist of traits. You go down and it's obvious. And they are just natural born actors, like my roommate. We had a couple of occasions, how's it going? All right. Where obviously he's lied to me, and he knows that I've clocked him on his lie. I'm looking at him straight in the face, and you know you're lying, you know that I know you're lying, and you won't break character. You won't confess or do anything. You try and tap dance around it. It was amazing. These people are out there. You will run into them. You might date them. You might marry them. Closing thought is that Oprah Winfrey on her network, I think a while back, did a whole show about who the F did I marry. And one case study or story after another of men or women that married people that just held themselves out to be doctors and just ripped them off. Those people are out there, guys. Look for it and wish you well. Bye.